Hello, folks, and welcome to another episode of the MR Runningpains podcast. This is episode 58 with physical therapist Miriam Salloum. Miriam has been a guest on this podcast multiple times as we've gone over a slew of different injuries and maladies of the lower extremities. We've been really trying to focus on things that go on with the runner's body and kind of give you guys some tips and resources that can help you if you run into these. So if you want to go back through previous episodes in the show notes, I've listed Miriam's episodes and what we focused on. Today we are focusing on the iliotibial band, the IT band, which can cause a lot of pain for multiple reasons. And we go over those reasons and how you can help resolve it and things that might help. So I appreciate Miriam coming on here and sharing her knowledge. As always, she is a fantastic resource. You can find out more about Miriam on therunnersmechanic.com, which again, I'll put in the show notes. So thanks again, Miriam. And here she is. I have with me today Miriam Salloum of the Runner's Mechanic, my resident physical therapist and multi-time guest. Today, as I said in the intro, we're going to be talking about the iliotibial band, or the IT. But let's start with letting Miriam introduce herself.
Thanks, Aaron. Happy St. Patrick's Day.
St. Patrick's Day, yes.
My name is Miriam Salloum. I'm a physical therapist in Asheville, North Carolina. I specialize in the biomechanical analysis of runners and injury related to running. And I own a clinic called the Runner's Mechanic.
Yes, and she has helped many of my athletes, including myself. So if you are in need of any type of assessment, like Miriam said, she does a fantastic job at what she does. And as Miriam mentioned, we are recording here on March 17th, St. Patty's Day. I am in my green. It's a little dark. I can't tell if Miriam is.
I have my one green shirt on, but yeah, I'm in my storage closet. So it's a little dim.
My Black Mountain Marathon and Mount Mitchell Challenge zip up. It's the only Kelly green thing I had. Anyway. So, like I said, today we're going to be talking about the IT band, the iliotibial band. And if we can start just simply, where is this located? Yeah,
so the IT band, or the iliotibial band, is a very large fascial structure. I'm a pretty visual learner, and when I work with clients, I like to help them visualize exactly what structures we're talking about. So if you're listening, you can just take the palm of your hand and actually extend your fingers and start at the top of your hip and kind of work it to the back of the hip a little bit. The glute max is one of the primary muscles. This is a large glute extender, large hip extender, and part of a little muscle called the TFL, which is in the front, a small hip flexor. These merge together, and the IT band is almost like a large tendon of these muscles. So it starts up in the hip and it runs all the way down to the lateral knee. It has several slips. If you take your hand now and run it down your thigh to the outside, and you're on the outside of your knee now, it actually has several slips that go both forward into the patellofemoral joint towards the kneecap, down under the kneecap, and then also down into the lower leg and inserts onto the tibia. So it has just massive attachments throughout the leg. It's a very large structure.
Absolutely. And Miriam and I have talked through various injuries and parts of the bodies in previous episodes. I'll put those in the show notes, but you mentioned it's made of fascia. Can you kind of talk about fascia, what it is, and what function the IT band serves?
Yeah. So, the IT band is really interesting because it's so strong. And I think the best way to think of it is one like a tendon, a very large tendon for the glute and hip muscles. It has pain receptors. It has a very tight weave of collagen. Then it also has very intimate attachments to the knee and lower leg. Its main purpose is to add stability to the knee and also to the hip. And it also transfers force as we rotate and land onto the leg. So as we'll get into the discussion later about when the IT band can be problematic, it really helps with attenuating forces as we land on the leg we're coming down on between 0 and 30 degrees. And that's when it transfers a lot of strain and tension. So it's a great structure that we have. It gives us a lot of stability, but when some things go awry, it can also cause a lot of pain.
Mm-hmm. Let's just talk about that pain. Where can it, and usually where does it manifest?
Yeah, so you can have various types of pain and injury with the IT band starting up on top of the hip. So sometimes people will experience a pain up in the very top, almost like a glute tendinopathy. Okay, and that's more where the muscle is having its issues. But as it goes down, as IT band goes down over what's called the greater trochanter. So if you run your hand down the side of your hip, you'll feel this kind of bony knob or prominence. That's called the greater trochanter of the femur. That's where sometimes we can get trochanteric bursitis. I think that's a really common that you'll hear once in a while. Also, as the IT band comes down, and if you run your hand down the thigh to the outside of the knee, you also have what's called the lateral femoral condyle. That's another place that it can have some compression. And then, as I mentioned earlier, it has these large attachments that go into the actual patellofemoral joint, the joint between the kneecap and the knee. We also can get a lot of compression there and also down into the lower leg. So lateral hip pain, lateral knee pain. And a lot of times I'll have people that have pain that radiates down the side of the lower leg, the tibia. Sometimes it almost feels like an ache and can be misinterpreted as a nerve pain. Obviously, there's some things that are nerve pain, but the IT band can almost cause a lateral distribution of leg discomfort. So it can manifest in several different ways, but in runners primarily, I think the one symptom that really does stop them a lot of times is the lateral knee pain that it can exhibit.
You had mentioned that compression can cause this pain, compression on the IT. Can you expound on that just a bit? When we say compression, what's really going on that's really kind of causing that pain?
Yeah, so the big myth buster, I think that's always important to really get across is the IT band isn't tight. I think years ago we always talked about IT band tightness. You had to stretch it more and do all this stuff to the IT band, and that's not exactly accurate. The IT band, again, is an extension of the glute muscles and the TFL. When there's either excessive rotation or strain at the hip, it'll also extend that strain down through the IT band. And really, over the years, they found that it's actually the sensitization of the adipose tissue, the thin layer of fat that's caught between the IT band and the underlying structures. We mentioned, especially with the knee, is the knee joint. That compression can cause a lot of irritation. It's almost like an impingement syndrome. And so when we start having that pain, it's not so much that someone has become tight. A lot of times they're either in their actual movement or in their actual running form, they're either getting fatigued or having way too much motion in the hip. So it's either rotating or dropping at a fast rate, and it's causing that IT band to continue to press or impinge upon that fatty tissue between the IT band and the knee. So that's really where IT band pain and tightness is perceived from.
Okay. And obviously it can be extremely painful. And if the pain is tolerable or manageable for a runner, and I want to stress that form is not compromised when they run, is it okay, or is it dangerous to try to run through this IT band pain?
Yeah, that's a great point. And this is one of the things when I sit down with a client and they start describing their symptoms, if it's seeming to be more IT band, I kind of get excited for them because the IT band, just like we talked a little bit with patellofemoral pain, it's a large fascial structure. This is mainly soft tissue. So it doesn't mean any intra-articular damage to the knee. The knee joint itself can be perfectly healthy. The one thing is IT band pain can be severely painful. So no matter, what level of runner, it can really stop somebody in their tracks. Frequently we'll hear it feels like a knife going into the side of the knee when it gets bad. And then sometimes just the whole leg just locks up. There's an inability to actually even have any turnover. So, the good news is, yes, it doesn't mean any intra-articular knee damage necessarily when you're having IT band pain. It's fascial. It's something that can be corrected, but it also can be severely painful.
Mm. And so, if a person is able to continue running, do you have any suggestions that might, lessen or not make that pain occur so frequently, such as like, would you suggest that they run on the flat, try to not make as many climbs / descents? Is there a surface, or is it just, see what presents the pain and go from there?
Yeah. So there's kind of two scenarios. So a lot of times when I have somebody come in that's been having IT band pain, and usually there's an episode that's kind of thrown them a little bit over the ledge a bit with their symptoms. A lot of times that is pretty strenuous downhill, running on tired legs, adding downhill, or being on a cambered surface. And cambered means that the surface is actually angled for a period of time. These are things that can put excessive strain on the IT band, especially if the hip is fatigued or feeling some weakness at the time. So those are usually the histories that we hear. If you're actually running and your IT band is starting to give you problems, you just need to make it out of the run and get back to your car type thing. You might want to walk the downhills. That's where we have a lot more strain, is during the downhill descent. And the reason for that is because, as a lot of runners know, when we run downhill, even though you don't feel like you have to work as hard, you're having to handle a lot more impact because the ground theoretically is falling away from you. And we're also landed on a much more extended knee. The IT band really has its highest strain rates between 0 and 30 degrees of knee flexion. So with that having to handle higher forces of impact, the downhill can really start to aggravate already lingering IT band symptoms. So walking the downhills, trying to get on surfaces that aren't cambered or inclined if you have a choice. The uphill sometimes doesn't really cause as much problem. It's a little bit of a different scenario. Obviously, if you're doing a tempo workout, slowing down a little bit if you're having your IT band symptoms, just to get out of that run and try not to flare it up. The one thing is, if you can just address the symptoms early on, you really decrease the likelihood of having a highly inflamed tissue, because the more inflammation you have, it takes a little bit more downtime and modification to quiet those symptoms. So a lot of times it's not worth wrecking your knee in one run if you can just get home and get it taken care of and then go back at it.
Yes, real world situation. Your husband and I were running the mountain marathon in February, and I felt great on the uphill. The week before was the week I did my 50 miler, so I'm running on tired legs. Obviously felt great on the uphill, and we started to descend, and we were going pretty fast. I mean, we were going sub 7 on the way down, but anybody that knows the toll road knows that it's rocks everywhere.
Yeah.
So, my ankle and leg were kind of going all over the place on tired legs downhill. And that's when my IT band went on fire. And, I said, it hurts, but if we slowed down, the pain subsided a bit. And then, especially if I took a walk break, if I just took a walk break, the symptoms would dissipate. And then, I went a little bit further, we got back into like a slower jog, and it still I could still feel it was there, but it wasn't as bad. And then as soon as we started to increase pace or if it got rocky again and my foot started turning out, then it started really exacerbating the problem again. But like you said, I kept it in moderation so that I didn't really annoy it too much. And when we finished, I took a few days after that off and made sure that I, stretched out, let my legs recover. And then I didn't have any symptoms thereafter. It hasn't presented itself since, because, obviously I let myself recover. I didn't get to the point where I had inflamed it too bad. So all the things you say resonate really heavily with everything I just went through. So yes, I can definitely concur that the downhills will kill you.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
don't put yourself in that situation.
And that's a really good point to just bring that up. And what I really enjoyed about your interview with Tori when she was talking about the training that you had her do for Pitchell is because if you are, when you're looking at an event, obviously you want to train for your event, but if it has a lot of downhill and you're going to want to be doing a lot of fast downhill, you definitely want to not only do that training. I liked how y'all talked about doing some downhill training, but it's a lot of eccentric work. So it's something that you really, especially in your strength program, want to start integrating as an eccentric strength workout. I have a little video on my YouTube that has just a downhill strength workout, but it's just attenuating forces. How can you have really strengthen your glutes and your quads to soften impact? But I highly recommend before anyone looks at a race that's primarily downhill, because they're so attractive, right? A race that's downhill and, you just really, look at your PRs then and things like that. And, you just to keep your IT band and your knees healthy, it's a really great idea to work on a lot of eccentric strengthening. So I really like that about your interview with her.
Yeah, and it's to say that we don't want to do it all the time because that does put a lot of stress on the body as well. We try to incorporate it every few weeks so that, we're not constantly battering the body, because all of those eccentric, it causes a lot of stress on the body as well. So, just to let people know, it's not something you want to do week in and week out. Incorporate it into your training, but be smart about how you do it and how frequently you do it. Listen to your body and the signs of your body. You're going to notice that your quads are going to be sore. So take care of that body. Make sure that you're not overstressing it. Because that's what leads us down to the road to fatigue and eventually, can lead to injury. So just be careful with how much you do it. And I will also include in the show notes Miriam's downhill video. So thank you for that resource. So we've kind of talked about some of the things that can potentially, cause the IT band to flare up. Let's get deeper into underlying issues. What are some of the really, key components that can really cause the IT band, to really get into trouble? What is there specific weaknesses in certain muscles, or restrictions in certain parts of the body due to immobility or inflexibility?
Yeah. So, I always like to educate runners about the different planes that their body have to have strength in. Running, for the most part, is in a forward motion versus like if we're looking at soccer and some of the cutting sports. So the forward motion is called the sagittal plane. And usually people are fairly strong in those planes, but also as we land, we have to be able to stabilize against the side-to-side plane. Okay, that's called the frontal plane, and also the rotational plane, which is called the transverse plane. So those side-to-side muscles and those rotational muscles are really where the IT band really needs its strength from. So, when we're looking at the hip, and especially any asymmetries in the hip, it's really those things that we're looking with side-to-side strength. So examples of that would be even side plank endurance. That's one way you can simply test yourself at home, is going into a side plank and lifting the top leg. And can you hold one side as long as the other side? We're looking at 45 to maybe 60 seconds of hold in a really nice straight line in that side plank. Also rotationally, can you handle forces rotating in and out? And a good example when we talk about that is if people notice when they start to get tired that their knees are starting to touch and come together a lot more. Obviously, their knees aren't getting more flexible as they run. That knee knocking is actually a display more of the hips becoming weak with rotation. And so there's some exercises that we can do to help stabilize in the rotational plane. And really, I really believe to really conquer IT band issues, it's a two-part scenario, as is a lot of syndromes with running, a lot of pain syndromes, is that not only building the internal strength that you need and making sure side to side you have that endurance over and over again, but also looking at the mechanics of your running and making sure that not only when you're just starting out and you're fresh, but also when you're fatigued, we're not going through excessive joint angles of motion. That's really what the IT band will start to become cranky with, and increase what we call those strain rates, where it starts to compress on that fatty tissue around the hip and knee. So as we start to run and we start to become more tired and having more motion in our hips and our knees, and it's very hard to tell, as a runner, to have that kind of perception of yourself, of what your hips and knees are doing, especially as you get tired, is very difficult. So it's having someone take a look, I think, is very helpful. There's some really great drills that can help kind of encompass that, and so that you can start to decrease those angles when you start feeling your symptoms and really manage your symptoms well. So I think it's a two-part, really making sure you're strong side to side with those hip and core muscles. And then also making sure your running mechanics doesn't have excessive motion, especially when you get tired.
Awesome. Yeah, you had mentioned the side plank and lifting the leg, and that's something I try to work with my athletes on. And a lot of them, they can't hold it, not even 10 seconds. And so, they realize their lack of strength, and obviously we want to work them up from there. But are there other exercises along the same avenue that we can do that would help them build that strength?
Oh, yeah. I mean, there's a plethora of exercises, I think.
What is the one that is like clamshells, for instance?
Yeah. So I think it's important when somebody is really weak. And the funny thing with athletes is, when we talk about weakness, a lot of athletes aren't weak. Like they're super strong in some muscle groups, quads and sometimes with hamstrings. It's with the finer muscles, with the glutes, and especially how they interact with the core. Calf muscles. I know that sounds really strange, but calf muscles can be extremely weak, and we rarely focus in on them. So I think starting with something super simple that really isolates the motion. So when you're talking about clamshells, having external rotation to them, that's a really nice way to kind of focus on it. I really like frog bridges. That's a nice way. A frog bridge is when your feet are very close together, you're on your back and your knees are wide. So it almost looks like a bridge, but we change the foot position so the feet are together and the knees are wide apart. And you also strengthen the glute max at the same time, which is the main tensioner for the IT band. A nice perk of that is that at the same time, you're stretching your hip flexors. So hip flexor dominance is something that can really start to overshadow your ability to fire your glutes. So again, we really don't find that, when we talk about weakness, athletes are weak people. Obviously, a lot of them aren't. But when you start to have a lot of hip flexor tightness or dominance, it really can inhibit your ability to drive with your more powerful posterior muscles. So I like the frog bridges a lot. I think those are great. A lot of the side ones, either with, a little bit of band or a little bit of TRX straps, things like that. But again, there's a plethora, and I just like to go towards just nice reference points. So we always talk about the Jay Sherry book, Running Wired. There's a plethora of side exercises and rotational exercises. But I think it's always important to start with one that's very isolated, maybe on the floor, which we call non-weight bearing, and then doing one that's more functional and upright. Because obviously the big thing with running is, the best way to picture yourself is being like a pogo stick. Okay. And we have to, every time we land, we have to absorb that shock and bounce up and forward. And so we really have to be able to sustain forces through the entire trunk, through the entire column. So we don't buckle. So making sure that we do start to make these exercises more functional, keeping an upright trunk while we resist these forces side to side and in the rotational plane.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Yes. And you had mentioned Jay Sherry's book, Running Rewired. He does have a hip circuit in there, which includes the frog bridges. Mm-hmm. And there is a YouTube video. He has a YouTube video mm-hmm. How to do all of that. So I'll also put that in the show notes for anybody interested in seeing it. I love putting the hip circuit into all my runners, like once a week, just doing 1 round or 2 round, because it really does work on not only the strength of that pelvic region, the hip region, but the mobility as well. I think it's a really good circuit of exercises. So I'll plug that in the show notes as well. So thanks for mentioning him.
Yeah. Well, I think it's always nice to give someone, a go-to place. I mean, there's lots of go-to places, but That's a really easy one. And another good point to make too is if people, especially it's usually one side, it's always one side that seems to have a little bit more of a problem, except if like you're in a race and both legs are just shot and you're going downhill and you start having it on both sides, which is normal sometimes. But is to do some of that banded work like right before you go on your run. Just do some little glute activation exercises right, out of the car or while you're on the track, and just try to fire it before you do your run that day. It's super helpful.
Yeah. Yes. And once again, David Roche has a really good banded warm up. I have a banded warm up on my YouTube site, and I can also post those as well. So the show notes are going to be pretty busy today, people. So you had also mentioned that the IT band is not something that we typically would stretch. The IT band doesn't get tight, but there's muscles around it that can. Are there anything specific that runners can do? Any stretches that you would suggest if the hip region is tight, or the quad itself? Anything that you would say there that could help?
Oh yeah, definitely. And I'm not over against trigger point work. Trigger point work is anything where you take pressure and you can actually find a point. And I think it's super helpful, especially in the glutes max. So if you kind of feel in the muscle in the posterior hip, or if you go into that TFL, which is that little hip flexor muscle on the side. Just finding a point there, either with a ball or a foam roller, and with laying with moderate pressure. So that's not severe pressure. It's not a 9 out of 10 for 10 out of 10 being the worst pain. You don't want to have that, you don't need to do that, but really around maybe a 4 to a 5 out of 10 pressure, and holding there for 90 to 120 seconds on one of those trigger points. Those are great places to work. The lateral hamstring tends to get caught under the IT band, especially as it starts to has more strain. So that can be also a little bit entrapped under the IT band. The lateral quad also on the front side can get captured under there. Those are two places that can get pretty sticky. So you can also do a little bit of trigger point work there also. As far as mobilization, though, I really like things like split lunges, where you're basically in a functional hip flexor stretch. The back leg is either on the floor, or if you want more of a stretch, the back leg is propped up on a step. And when you do your lunge, it's a straight down drop. It's not a lunge forward. It's where you drop your body, your center of mass, so that the back knee goes straight down. And you're functionally going into a hip flexor stretch, and that does mobilize the IT band. So I think it's a really nice way to kind of free that up a lot. I think people feel a lot better when they start doing side planks with leg lifts. I think it helps mobilize the IT band. There's some palliative things. Some people do feel a lot better with cupping or foam rolling, and that's totally fine to do. There's no problem with doing that. I would just say be very careful about foam rolling anywhere near where you're having pain. So if you're having a lot of pain near the knee joint, don't compress further over the knee joint. And the same thing for the hip joint. So just, because you can actually flare up some of that inflammation that's already there. Taping, I think, is super helpful. There's a lot of great rock tape, I use a lot of rock tape because the adhesive is a lot better, I find, with my athletes, but you can do K-tape or whatever you have. But it is helpful, and there are some good studies that show palliatively it does feel a little bit better sometimes if you do tape your IT band. Just provides a little bit of a fascial lift sometimes with that. It's not ever I think the complete answer to myofascial pain, but it can definitely help a little bit, especially if you're already doing those things to alleviate it, like your strength. Ice, I don't think, is ever a bad idea. We definitely know this can be an inflammatory condition. So I think all those are really nice things to do. Some people like cupping. It's kind of a myriad of palliative ways that you can look at your IT band, but I do like trigger point work of the muscles that are involved with the IT band. I think that's nice. And then the taping is nice too.
Awesome. And just to be a little bit clearer, when you are foam rolling, should you ever go directly onto the IT band, the side of your leg, or should you keep it on the muscle bellies, like the like I said, the lateral quad and lateral hamstring, or is it okay to go directly on your side? Because I've seen, people rolling directly on our side. Is that okay?
Well, yeah, it's okay as long as, one, that's not the area of direct pain. So I would say and some people do have pain right in the mid portion of their IT band. If that's the case, I would not roll right over that area. I probably would stay to the sides of that. Again, because we just know that's probably where your inflammation is set up a little bit. And then also we're talking about moderate pressure, not a lot of pressure. So I think people definitely can put too much pressure into trigger points. A lot of times when I see people, they're already black and blue from what they've been doing at home, either with their massage gun or their foam roller or, the whole thing. So I think, that's just too much pressure and can cause inflammation in itself. So I think staying away from those painful or inflamed areas with the foam rolling is important.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
We keep going back to compression on these, insertional regions.
Mm-hmm.
With most products out on the market, there's always something that is going to claim that it's going to help whatever the injury may be. And in this case, like there's straps that claim to help the IT band, and basically they kind of create a compression or pressure point on that, that region where above the knee or below the knee where everything is kind of coming in. Is that ever an effective method for helping, or is that again creating more compression on a region that's already annoyed?
Yeah. As far as IT band straps, anecdotally and in the research, I really haven't seen much on that. I tell clients they can go try it if they like, but I really haven't had anyone say that's been a game changer for them. And that makes sense to me a little bit. The taping seems to be, I think, a lot more well received. And it's pretty easy nowadays for people to tape their IT band. That's not too laborious, but yeah, I really haven't seen any over the counter devices that have really been a game changer with that.
Okay. Okay. Other things that, over the span of time, I've kind of heard or thought about is obviously footwear. Mm-hmm. In this day and age, the category of true stability shoes is diminishing. But if a person is wearing a stability shoe, and let's say that they don't necessarily need the stability that shoe is offering, and it's actually not allowing the person to come to neutral. It's actually keeping them further out, if you will, and inhibiting their natural motion. Can that in and of itself create problems within the IT band and kind of lock up the knee or overstretch the knee, if you will, because the foot is kind of landing so laterally and kind of overstretching the side of the leg? Is that potential for cause of IT band pain?
Yeah, definitely. And so a good way to think about a running shoe is it's basically just an interface between the ground and your foot. So when we're talking about some of the leading and very, very well supported findings in the research, the leading causes of some of the surfaces, we're talking about a cambered road, so a road that has a slant to it or a trail that has a slant to it, even the beach. So if I have clients that are going to the beach, I really try to make sure that they know if they're going to run on the beach, if it's highly slanted, that might cause some problems. So the shoe is the same. And this usually is when we're starting to get into shoes that become a little bit stiffer, and then they start to wedge with more inserts on the inside because they feel like they're buffering something. They don't really know what they're buffering, just whether they're already trying to deal with knee pain and some other things. But if we start to build up that inside of the shoe, it can start to have people be thrown more onto the outside of their leg. Hip abductor weakness will throw people more into the outside of their leg. And so if you have, sometimes you put those two together, weakness on the outside of the leg, and then you're putting them on a slant, yes, definitely it can cause a recipe to have an irritated IT band. Mm-hmm.
Right. Okay. And just to kind of complete that conversation, if you're wondering if you have too much stability in your shoe, some of the wear signs can kind of help you understand where your foot is, towing off, if you will. I hate to use that term, but where you're coming off of the shoe. If you're wearing on the outside of the shoe, now, a lot of people came into the run shop and they showed me their shoes and they're looking at the heel. And so if you're a heel striker and wearing on the outside of the shoe, that's just where you're landing. Where we're talking about is more towards the forefoot of the shoe. and looking if you have extensive wear, especially if it's really sharp on where the pinky toe is. That's a good sign that you're coming off the outside of the shoe, and potentially you have too much stability, or if you're in a neutral shoe, you're just landing that far outside. We see it a lot with the maximum cushion shoes, especially for people that don't pronate enough. They underpronate, or sometimes it's called supination. We'll see that lateral side, that pinky toe side, gets crushed a lot more frequently. So if you look in a mirror and you're looking straight on in the mirror and your feet are tilting out, then it's probably a good time to replace the shoe or look at a different style of shoe to see if you can get a little bit more level. But any other points on there that you want to add or correct?
Oh, no. I think it's also important for people to know, because we definitely have some runners that have IT band issues, that when they have, there's different structures to your knees. So like if you're standing, you put your feet together. If your knees are naturally bowed or far apart, we call that varum. And some people have knees that are pretty much straight up and down. And then if you put your feet together and your knees touch sharply inward, that's called valgus. Sometimes when people have a varum structure, so they have the bowed structure, and obviously that's just how they are. It's just how they're built. There's nothing wrong with that at all. But if you start to couple that with a lot of arch support and then double it up with hip weakness, that can really also make a recipe for lateral knee pain or IT band pain. It doesn't mean it's not correctable at all. There's a lot of great things that we can do for people that have IT band issues, that have that kind of bowing or tibial varum, or even in our older runners that have a little bit of breakdown of one of the knee joint compartments. There's some different ways that we can do drills and help them run that will help decrease the load on the outside. But I would say be particularly aware of if you do have that bowed structure and you're starting to really go into a lot of medial wedging with your shoes, it can also put a lot of strain on the outside of the knee.
Right on. All right. Cool. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Any last points that we need to make? Caution, give advice, words of wisdom?
Yes. I mean, so the big thing with all of these, just know that if you are struggling, especially with IT band pain, it's usually not that hard to remedy. It's not going to take that much time out of your day. Sometimes I think when we do these podcasts, everything sounds a little bit overwhelming, all these exercises and things to look at. And a lot of times it's just one or two simple things that you can do during your week and integrate into your runs. And what runners love, which I love to tell them, is you don't have to necessarily quit running when you start having this. I mean, there's ways to modify your runs, even for a week or two, that can really take down your symptoms while you build a little bit more of a base on what you're going to do with your strength program. So it's can be fixed. And it's one of those things that I think as a runner is good news to know that's what's causing your lateral knee pain. So just know it's not too overwhelming, and can deal with it.
Awesome. Thank you, Miriam. And just so people, if they have questions or want to reach out, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
Sure. I have a website, therunnersmechanic.com. Has all my information. You can book online, answers questions. It has my contact information, my email, runnersmechanic@gmail.com. Also has my cell on there. So, feel free to shoot me an email. You can also ask a question on Facebook. But I love teaching this stuff. Thank you so much for having me on so often. It's really fun to get back to teaching a little bit. It's really nice.
Thank you. I certainly appreciate all your knowledge and for sharing it with us.
Yeah, thanks, Aaron. I appreciate it.
Thank you once again to Miriam for coming on and sharing her wealth of knowledge. I hope we can all take something away from that can help us in our running or just in life. And if you have questions for Miriam, don't hesitate to reach out. Her website and contact will be in the show notes, so you can get to her and ask her questions, whether it be on the IT band or anything else that you're having a problem with. Again, all of her episodes that we've gone over, the various injury and lower extremity episodes, they're going to be in the show notes. So if you want to take a listen to any of those and see if any of those pertain to anything that you're going through right now, by all means, I hope they help. And this week here is race week for me. I'm recording this Tuesday, March 23rd, and March 27th is the Umstead 100 miler. They have done an amazing job. I just have to say, as a race director, I am thoroughly impressed with the work that has gone into making this event happen. Not only because of what we've gone through for COVID and them having to cancel last year, but just the work that they've done to make everyone safe, to help appease the park's wishes so that they can host the event and to hopefully host it again in the future. It really is. They have concerned themselves and gone overboard to make sure that they are being as safe for everyone involved, which is great. And they've made a few concessions. They've also kind of been able to increase our accessibility to not only crew and pacers, but to actually having the access to both. At first, we were only going to be able to have one or the other, so one person for both duties. So in other words, if I had a pacer, I could not have a crew. And vice versa. If I had a crew person, I could not have a pacer. So they have now opened that back up so that we can have a person crewing and a person pacing at the same time. So that's fantastic. I really appreciate that. And I'm all set to that front. I've got two good friends, Nathan Frantz and Aaron Kolk, who are going to be helping me in this event. I really can't wait to get to the starting line. They're doing time trial starts, so every 5 seconds they're going to start a wave of 25 people. We have two lines that will go simultaneously, and they kind of did a seating, if you will. So the faster runners will be in the first wave. I am number 14, so I will be on the 7th start. So about 35 seconds after the official start, I'll get to go. The race field's looking really strong. This is a race that has seen sub 14 hours for 100 miles. So very fast. Individuals come out here. Top of the field, number 1 seed is Jim Sweeney, who is an amazing fast runner in his own right. So should be an interesting race to see how it unfolds. I've got some athletes running, so I wish the best to Bonnie Hatley and Pat Hartzell. Those guys are toeing the line. This is their first 100-mile attempt for each of them. I'm very excited for both of them, as well as some other friends that are running. I should say congratulations to Michelle and Rick Gray for their recent marriage. Rick, I believe, is going for his 10th buckle, his thousandth mile buckle here at Umstead. So running Umstead for his 10th time, he gets a gold buckle if he finishes this time. I think that's correct. So congratulations to both of them. They will both be out there running. Excited to see those two. Michelle was formerly Michelle McClellan. I'm sure you've heard of her. She races all the time and does amazing. Great people out of Tennessee. So good luck to the both of them and to everyone racing. Even if it's not at Umstead, I hope everybody has tremendous races this weekend as races start to pick back up. I know my athletes, we've got Georgia Death Race this weekend. There's a ton of stuff going on. So, good luck to all. I hope everybody has fun, stays safe. It's really cool to see this going on again. As I said, I'm super excited. Can't wait to get to the starting line. I think I'm more fit aerobically than I have been in years. So as long as I pace myself and consume my nutrition and stick to what my plan is, and the heat doesn't get too bad, it's now looking like it might get up to possibly 80 degrees, which obviously I'm not quite acclimated to yet, but but it is what it is. Race day, that's why we find out. Excited for that. So next week I will kind of do my follow-up, talk about how the race went. I also have some really cool interviews coming up. Francesca Conte. Francesca is a really good friend. I've known her. I basically cut my teeth on her in Gill's trail races, the Bad to the Bone series. Belmonte just happened. Belmonte has a 50K and 50 miler in the Shenandoah National Forest. It's beautiful races up there. it's kind of where I got my trail running roots going back in, the early 2000s, 2001 even, I think. I was doing races up there. So I've known those guys for a long time. Franny and I are going to be discussing mountain racing, and specifically how to really train for mountain races, some ideas, uphill running, downhill running, pole usage. We'll get into all of that. So really looking forward to her conversation, because she has some really awesome race experience under her belt. So very cool. So I'll be talking to her next week. I think I'll probably release her podcast next week. So stay tuned for that. I'll also be interviewing Jessica Vandenbush, who is kind of at the forefront, the leader, the mind behind Eat Clean and Run Dirty, a new running publication that she is financing and publishing herself, with just really great ideals. Like, we're all one. Let's all take care of one another and be as welcoming as we can. I love her message, and we're really just going to have a conversation to kind of talk about how we can be more inclusive to everyone, and make our sport even richer, even better. So looking forward to that conversation with Jessica. That will probably release in 2 weeks. And I still have to record my conversation with my friend Scott. If you listen to the last episode, I kind of said that his episode would be coming up. We had some recording difficulties, couldn't get our technologies working, so we had to postpone that one so that we can take another time to record it. So my conversation with Scott Socha and Joe Quinlan, who are certified podorthists, you can find out what that means in that episode. That will be a few weeks down the road, but really lining up some great guests. I'm excited about it. I want to thank all of you guys for listening. I want to thank all of my guests. Just reached over 10,000 downloads. So I'm really excited that this podcast is getting out there, and hopefully helping runners. That's my point, is just to kind of help, and have guests on that can teach us things. I love hearing stories, inspirational stories. They're wonderful, but I feel like that that genre of podcast is kind of overplayed. There's so many podcasts doing that. Not that there's not wonderful people, but I'd like to learn from those wonderful people and hear more about how they do what they do, and kind of get inside of their training, their mental attitudes, their fortitude, I think that's that can help us, because we need the inspiration, we need the motivation. I'm not saying that doesn't have its worth. Believe me, I appreciate those podcasts and listen to them myself. But I'm trying to make some information available that's digestible to you. I can't talk over my head, because I know, like most of you, we get started and talk about the real deep dive into the science, and I just kind of glaze over. So I'm trying to make it so that it's for the common folk like us, the common runners, that we just want to understand more of how we can do things better. So hopefully you're enjoying the podcast. Like I said, I sincerely appreciate all of you that have subscribed, that have left a review. Again, all of the people that have contributed to this podcast and becoming guests, making suggestions. I had some great suggestions come in the other day from Ryan Banks, who is running Georgia Death Race this weekend. Him and John Griffin, they're two of my athletes, so I wish them well. Some really good insights into improving the podcast, so I appreciate that. If you guys have anything you want to add, say, suggest, please feel free. Drop me a line. My email is runningpains@gmail.com. There's a contact form on my website, mrrunningpains.com. So you can check that out. All of my socials and Strava, all that information is in the show notes. So if you want to follow along or leave me a message through those avenues, please feel free to do so. I am open ears, and sincerely, I appreciate the positive and negative feedback. I want to make sure that I'm doing everyone a service and doing the best job that I can. With this weekly podcast. It's coming to you every week. Launches Thursday mornings, 6 a.m. Eastern. And, like I said, week after week, I just hope to keep turning out some useful content. My newsletter will be coming out soon. If you're not subscribed to the newsletter, jump on my website. Again, mrrunningpains.com. And there is a subscribe button on the homepage. The old archived newsletters and podcasts are also archived on the website. You just go to the Connect page. So in the drop-down menu, the top left-hand corner, click the 3 lines and it will drop down menu and you will see the Connect page. And on the Connect page, that's also a place where you can contact me, subscribe to the newsletter, but also click on the newsletter link or the podcast link and see all my previous podcasts and newsletters. So, it's all I got for this week. I really can't wait to line up this Saturday, and I can't wait to tell the tale. Either way it goes, right? Positive or negative, I'm hoping for a great day, but whatever it is, I'm going to be optimistic and say it's going to be a great day, and just have fun out on the trail and be appreciative for the fact that I'm out there running on some of the trails that that I actually really kind of grew up training on when running at NC State. It's cool to be going back home in that regard. So thank you guys once again. I can't wait to talk to you next time. I hope you enjoyed episode 58 with Miriam Salloum. Aaron Saft, signing out till next week. Keep running.
Wrote this song while crewing Aaron on a 100-mile foot race through the trails in the rain and mud. How about that? 100 miles to go. 100 miles to go. Don't ask me why I do it, I don't know. Miles by foot. 100 miles by foot. Don't ask me why I do it, I can't stay put. Rain is a coming, can't give a fit. Rain is a coming, can't give a fit.